them, through them. The only conclusion was that when the door had been forced onto my mum, she had been holding her glasses. She dropped them. She was then robbed. Assailant leaves, the door on the spring, drags the glasses over and brings them to that position.
Someone kicked the door, the Yale lock hit her in the face. You can actually see, when you look at the photograph of her face, you can see the line down her face of the angle of the door. And yet everyone has maintained she fell down the stair. Not so.
With her handbag, purse and house keys all missing from her flat when she was found, Les Brown concluded that Annie Davies was the victim of a run-through robbery that went wrong. She was known to carry large amounts of money with her.
Somebody told her once that if she had a certain amount of money in the bank, then they would start taxing her on it. And there was nothing I could do or anybody could do to persuade her otherwise.
I think that she was a pre-arranged target. She was a mugging waiting to happen. And they would, if she went into a local shop and opened this bag and was purchasing something, say at £3.50, she would bring out a roll of notes.
What is that? £3.11, right? That's super.
The fridge freezer packed in at one point, and I took her along to get a new one. And she paid cash at the desk and opened her purse, and it was just choked with money. And that was the first time I became aware that she had that type of money. In fact, I actually commented, and it's haunted me ever since. I says, "Mum, some wee junkie's going to have that off you if they spot it." And who knows, that might be exactly what happened.
More convinced than ever that his mother had been brutally murdered, Brian Davies submitted a claim to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, a government-funded scheme to compensate victims of crimes of violence. The application was initially turned down, but an oral appeal was heard in June 2005.
It was unfortunate that there were some apparent mistakes made along the way by the police. Particularly, the police allowed Brian back into the home before the property had been properly examined and a forensic examination completed, and he unwittingly came back into the house at their permission. He hadn't been told not to go back into the house and effectively contaminated the scene.
The three-strong appeal panel rejected the official police line that the great-grandmother had fallen down the stairs and choked in her dentures. They ruled Annie's death was attributable to a crime of violence and awarded her three children £15,000.
It wasn't my job to prove that it was a murder or even it was culpable homicide. All I had to prove was that it was a crime of violence, and they were persuaded by some of the key facts and they laid that out in their decision. The conclusion I think they reached ultimately was that the door had been forced open on Annie Davies as she opened the door, colliding with her head and causing the trauma that ultimately resulted in her death.
Everybody was ecstatic about it, that finally we had recognition that we were in fact right about this, and it was a great feeling.
The decision that the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board made, I believe clearly indicates that here are a group of professionals who have examined the evidence and they have concluded that this was a heinous crime.
The landmark decision, 7 years after Annie Davies' battered body was found by a shocked neighbour, was a huge embarrassment to Strathclyde Police. In an effort to find a solution and build bridges with the family, the case is now being re-investigated by the Force's Cold Case Squad.
All the cumulative facts, evidence, medical reports all point towards a homicide. And the fact that there's two tragedies here. There is a tragedy for myself and the extended Davies family, all her friends and everybody that loved my mother very deeply. There is a second tragedy here, and that is one for Strathclyde Police.
In many, many ways, the Annie Davies case is as controversial and as important as the Shirley McKee case. Strathclyde Police made mistakes at the very beginning of this investigation, but instead of saying sorry, they have spent millions and millions of pounds conducting a large number of reviews conducted and involving some of Scotland's top policemen, many of whom hold extremely important positions, not just in Strathclyde today, but elsewhere in Scotland.
Although Strathclyde police were prepared to accept that this was a suspicious death, they would never take the step of going on and saying that it was being investigated as a murder investigation. Brian Davies' position was that he always thought that his mother had been murdered. And because the two parties couldn't come together with that, then they remained apart. We're working closely now with Brian Davies and the Davies family and working together. I think that's the important thing. We're looking for resolution to this. We're hoping that by working together, making joint appeals, that people will come forward.
In the absence of any DNA evidence, they are reliant on information from people in the local community.
One thing that has never been resolved is that there was a lady going about selling trinkets or clothes pegs or mop heads in that area. The description varies so much, although it was on the Saturday, that there may well have been 2 or 3 ladies because the descriptions are so varied. In addition to that, there was a young boy seen hanging about with these ladies. Were you in the Erskine area on the 30th of May? Did you have somebody calling at your door selling you trinkets or other household goods? Did you think anything suspicious about that person? Anything at all?
Bringing someone to justice will come as a huge relief to Annie Davies' family and mark the culmination of an 8-year struggle to prove the God-fearing pensioner was murdered. But nothing will bring Annie back. Her family will forever be haunted by the premature and brutal manner in which their gentle mother met her death.
She was just a bundle of human kindness. She had earned the right to go to bed one night, turn over and slip away, and she was denied that.
You feel robbed, you feel cheated, and it's so upsetting really, you know, that it should never have happened.
There's somebody out there done that and they've got away with it. That I shall have to live with the rest of my life.
Coming up next on Discovery, when a pizza delivery man is found murdered, police suspect robbery. Why does investigator Dale Hinman think differently? Keep it here for Crime Scene USA